Hey everyone, it's time for a Black Moiety update. So, here are the wetlands. We have recently redone the wetlands, or at least I have. The grass is a lot shorter, it's a lot less dense to prevent lag, although it lags an engine. But, yeah, it's a lot smaller in size, so it's not as confusing. You don't feel like it's really too high or more high than it should be. So first things first, we've updated the engine to 4.12, which means that the ocean shader also had to be updated, which is unfortunate because right now it's kind of bugging out and giving us this black effect, which I don't really know why it's doing that, but we're going to fix that. We've been greyboxing in the age where important locations are going to be. So here is the first little area is a town called Vela, which is this little kind of shack, little shack town, connular adobe thatch shacks that the wetland Hiva clan live in. Now moving over here, we have the town of Tacome, which is coming along nicely. Whoops. This is basically a conglomeration of adobe huts like the kind you'd see in Riven on Jungle Island. Whoops, why is it doing that? It's because I have the speed too fast. One sec. So over by Tacome, we have this kind of network of huts huddle around this central hub, which I described in the Adan's journal as kind of what I described as kind of a honeycomb type scene. Although it's not really that; it's more like it's a nestling of huts around this one area. Now we're going to have platforms which are going to be there. These bases are there for flooding. We're going to have these platforms and boardwalks connecting all the different huts together in one elaborate network. Increase the speed here. Now over here we have the some silos, which are grain silos used for farming and keeping dried fruit and dried plants and animals and stuff like that. So for the wetlands, for the Hiva clan. Now over here we have some assets, some rock assets, which are not final, but these are an example of the type of rock assets we might see in this area for the different sides of the landscape. So over here is the steam marshes, which are not very marshy yet, but they're grassy. We have some tall reeds and such. Now, an important area is the Sacred Valley, which I've greyboxed in the walls of, which snake through the dividing range. Now, this is a section of area of territory which is walled off by the Temple of Alatuan, which is given to the temple, and is the area where the hive is, which you can see right over there. I'll show you that in a sec. Now I've added in these walls which have these little turrets, and there's going to be a big sort of iron and wooden gate your player will have to confront at some point in the game and find a way to get around or get in this reserved area, which is reserved for the temple and those who are members of the temple and the elite and such. So just going in this region, we have down here the basin for the hive, which will most likely be enlarged to be more accurate to the scale of Riven soon enough. Now down here I've added a chest, which you can see where the hive is going to go. It's kind of silly, but whatever. Now, this up here is a squam nesting spot. We're kind of like they're kind of like hot air balloons, but they're moiety hot air balloons made up of moiety material like wood and plants and leaves and things like that, and mud and all that stuff. And they're used for squam. Basically, squam ports. Now, the squam are these large avian, reptilian-style creatures, kind of a mix between a pterodactyl and a dragonfly, a creature you see in the Riven around, flying around the hive. Now the temple have used the swamp for transportation. They're using these. They've built these little ports which hover above the mountains, where they can nest and be fed and stuff, which are sort of these networks where they can take a squam somewhere in particular around the island to other nesting spots, other little ports. So that's kind of going to be sort of one of our examples of fast travel, is using the squam nesting ports. Now down here we have the Lake Moiety. Now this is a region which I've been greyboxing in. These what are kind of like mud and wood mounds built on the water. Now this is inspired by a painting by Richard Van der Wende for the movie Willow from his website, and I thought it would be quite appropriate for the moiety since we have this lake region here in the center. Now this should not be like this. This should be up more like this. This is bothering me. But anyways, these nice little mounds, kind of like beaver dams, connected by walkways, little boardwalks, little planks of wood, connecting these huts together. Now the Wild East I've recently re-landscaped to be more like a highland of some sort. Mostly because the original way I had done it was kind of very noisy, and it was flat and very hard to traverse. Now this is more like what I imagined it in when writing the lore. It was kind of a rocky highland, something you'd see in Scotland or something, or parts of Africa, where the Gapoto forests are, these kind of like giant gourds, craggy gourds, where the moiety, the eastern moiety, have carved them and carved them essentially into homes. Now I'm going to show you, before that, I'm going to show you the south. I'm just going to fast forward this speed here. Now, down here, right here actually, this is Ash, which is one of the towns in the story, which is going to be a Dunny-built town, built right when Tay was first founded. Now, it's kind of got this Old West spooky kind of feel to it. It's essentially built by Dunny craftsmiths, Dunny carpenters, and stonemasons. Now, the structures have fallen into disrepair because of the materials that were used when they were constructed. So porous stone and porous wood, which have kind of turned the town into this very spooky-looking scene, especially with the ash winds that barrel down from Mount Gen. So it's a nice little area. So down here is the Shipwreck Coast, where there is the Clan Rem towns. Now this is Sida, which is the largest of the Clan Rem territory, largest of the Clan Rem towns, which I've greyboxed in. We have lighthouses and towers and such, and a temple, library. So this is kind of built in a Dunny aesthetic, because the Clan Rem are closely tied with the guild of ink makers and bookmakers and writers and such. That being the Dunny guilds, because they oversee the ink beetles, which have been written into the age. Now down here is, I think, the town of Rem. If it's not there, it must be down here. I think it's one of these small towns is the town of Rem. Now over here we have Ashtasa, or what's greyboxed in so far. This is, what I've greyboxed in so far is the Armana district, which is where Adon, who is our main character, is from. Now over here we have sort of part of the main island. This is the, the clan council building. Now down here is the main palace of the queen, which is going to look like something out of Riven, most specifically the Riven hive on the cover box, because I'm following a similar motif with, we're going to have these little warmly lit windows shining through the walls of this rock, which is actually something we're going to do similarly on Mount Gen, on the walls of Mount Gen. So all of this is the Iline Basin, which has all been mostly landscape. Now over here we have Kara, which is kind of like a military fort. It's the big kind commercial center of Clan Wark. It's also a military, what used to be a military city. Now this is where the Tishi honey is farmed. Tishi are these large insects which fly around the crag, and their husks are used as homes for the moiety in this town once they die, because they grow quite large and are thus carved out and used for structures and such. Now over here we have, on the very, very edge of the crag, we have a town named after Carol, who I believe was Catherine's either brother or cousin, I'm not sure, but anyways, that was a character in Book of Atreus who dies, I think drowning. I think that's what it was. I haven't read Book of Atreus in a while, but I thought it'd be appropriate to name this town, this little port, after Carol, which is Carol Port right there. On the Golden Plateau, we have what are these Greyboxes are meant to be, is essentially sacred oak tree sites. Now, the sacred oak tree, the oak is the species of tree, the Rivanese name for the species of tree that we see on Prison Island and in the hive, essentially the tree that the hive is made out of. These are ancient, very, very ancient trees that were written to the age, or they're already part of the age, but they are essentially locations where ancient burial grounds can be found of a long dead civilization that lived on the age thousands of years before the moiety arrived, where there are amber veins and all sorts of treasures and tombs and such found underneath underneath them and at their bases. So I've greyboxed those in where those locations are going to be, and that's the Golden Plateau is a sacred site for the moiety. Now over here in the western jungles, not much is greyboxed in yet, but we do have, this is going to be Yisha's retreat. Now, one idea I had was that Yisha spent some time on Tay during her first century of life after the death of Catherine, where she studied the words of the Watcher and uncovered the prophecies of the Grower, essentially. Now, that's still to be determined whether that will make it into the final game, but that was one idea I thought was quite interesting to show part of Yisha's character on Tay. So, now over here, that's about it for this region. I'm just going to show you the rest of the island. The northern wastes are this area up here, which are this kind of this barren, expansive, ashen gray desert. Now into the Black Bay, where Mount Gen sits, which is a place shrouded in mystery. We're not going to reveal much information about that area for now, but it's all been landscaped in this area, which is the northwest section, and back down to the wild east over here. So that about sums it up for the age as a whole. Oh, here's another one of these balloons, kind of ports. Oh, actually, there's one last thing here. This is the Riverlands, which have not really been landscaped yet, but we do have. It is quite flat, actually, but there are these riverbeds, which you can kind of see are kind of put in here. But we have the town of Nava, which is here, which is this. What you see here these are trees, and these are the bases of the trees are going to be where entrances and windows are, essentially huts where the moiety have inhabited them, and they've carved out these shafts inside the trees where they climb up and essentially branch the canopy together using walkways and pathways up there. So it's a lot of the towns in the Riverlands feature trees prominently in their design and their architecture. So what you're hearing is music from the project. Now this is a track Agodu created. Actually, the last track was also a track by Agodu, who's been doing some music for us. There's actually another track by Hollister in this mix. So we have Hollister and Agodu are both doing music, along with we have another newcomer. I forget his name. So that's about it for this. Oh wait, one last thing actually. I keep forgetting this one last thing. Over here is Ansel's Island, which is the last port, the last area before sailors are bound off into the Western and Southern Ocean. Now this is a little port town called Last Chance Port, which is the last mooring place of the Moiety before explorers venture off into the unknown. Over here is another town. I think it's called Aluentu, which is right there. So that's about it for the H as a whole. So I'll give you just a brief overview by going way up here. This is kind of what it looks like from high up. So of course we see the distance affect the water, but these are the regions right here. So that's about it. Showing you Tay, the progress so far. We will have the water updated soon enough. We will have the controls ready soon enough, so we can have mist style controls with grabby hand and such, and first person movement. So that's about it, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Have fun!